Mr Acting President, I rise to speak on behalf of the Greens in support of the Local Government Elections Review Bill. Mr Acting President, this bill makes a number of changes to the laws that govern local government elections. The Honourable Ben Hood has outlined the key tenets of the bill, so I don't propose to go through them further. Suffice to say that I think a number of these are positive advancements, and they address issues that have come to light. It's interesting, I know the Honourable Member has said the government waited too long to take action on this. I recall being in the dying days of the Marshall government, one of the last bills that we dealt with then was actually a local government reform bill, virtually exactly the same time 4 years ago, and I had the opportunity to participate in that debate as well. I do think it's regrettable that local government reform pieces tend to happen at this stage in the cycle because we do tend to run out of time. And so it's not a criticism specifically of the Labor government, as I say, because the Liberals did exactly the same thing. Rather, I think what we should do is make sure that we, after each council election, have a thorough and comprehensive review and deal with all those matters early on in the parliamentary term so that we have an opportunity for a big tidy up. And to my mind, there are issues around compulsory voting, for instance, that I have an open mind to and would really like to look into. There's questions about council's rating capacity and the exemptions that apply that I think would be really worthy of further examination. But I think that these are all issues for the next parliament, and I certainly intend to raise them then. But I think this is a good first step. And I do also want to acknowledge the Minister Joe Sockarch for the collaborative way that he and his office have engaged with the Greens. I think it's fair to say that the Minister has been very open-minded in the approach that he has taken and adopted a real common-sense approach, I think, to good ideas coming from the crossbench. So I thank him for that. In terms of some of the amendments that the Greens are advancing today, some of these won't be of any great surprise to you, Acting President, because they're consistent with the things that I've raised before, but some are a little bit new. So I thought I'll use this second reading stage to just flesh out the focus of the amendments. The first amendment I move will be to lower the voting age to 16 years in local government elections. So this would promote the involvement of young people in the democratic process by lowering the voting age for local government elections to 16. It would give the opportunity for young people to have their voices heard. We know, of course, that 16 and 17-year-olds are old enough to drive, they pay their taxes, they're old enough to even join the military. Surely they should be old enough to vote in local government elections. We're facing a situation at the moment where faith in democracy is really starting to decline, and I know that the Malinauskas government has been doing good work in terms of trying to engage young people with citizenship. This gives them an opportunity to have a real say in local democracy and also build their understanding of how elections work by participating in local council elections. And anything we can do to increase the participation in local government, I think we should look at. I'm disappointed to hear the Liberals say they don't support this change, but not surprised. I mean, if the latest opinion polls are anything to go by, 16 and 17-year-olds are not that likely to vote for the Liberal Party, Mr President. But I am disappointed to hear that the Labor Party are not supportive of this, particularly when one considers the issues that we are dealing with as a parliament are intergenerational, things like housing inequality, things like climate change, things like transport policy. These are things that 16 and 17-year-olds have a real stake in, and I would like to see the Labor Party finally listen to those young people. The other amendment that I'll be moving will be to introduce an option for local government members to opt in to use the pay-as-you-go for allowances paid to local government members. Now, this is an unusual amendment in many ways, Mr President, but something I became aware of during my time on local government. A lot of people who participate in local government as elected members work other roles, and the allowance... Excuse me, Mr President. And the allowance is, in effect, a second income source for them. But because pay-as-you-go the usual pay-as-you-go arrangements don't apply, That means that when you get to the end of your financial year, you can be stung with a huge tax bill. And given local councillors are not paid very much money, that seems to add insult to injury, to sting people with a huge tax bill at the end. At least my amendment allows local government members themselves to opt in to use the pay-as-you-go for allowances, so that the council administration can collect that for them and they're not stung by a significant tax debt at the end. Local governments, of course, and administrations already have the mechanism to do this because they use these processes for paying their employees. So I feel this is a very simple amendment, but one that would actually be a positive advancement for people that serve on local government. The other amendment I'm moving, that the names of each nominee be published prior to the close of nominations. It takes up a key issue that's been raised on multiple occasions. Indeed, I think the Honourable Sarah Game has raised it, the Liberal opposition has raised it as well. I think it's fair to say, in my discussions with the Minister, he had initially had some concerns around this, but has been open to entertaining that amendment, and I thank him for that. One of the reasons for this amendment is, I think, the concern that's been flagged by a lot of regional councils that in situations where you have small communities, you might find yourself in a situation where there are no nominees in a particular ward, and finding out who exactly is nominating and where might help prospective candidates decide whether or not to put their hands up. So this amendment really is taking up that issue. It used to be, of course, the case that that information was disclosed prior. It was taken out in the local government reforms back in 2021. This proposal is to put it back in. My next amendment deals with the pooling of campaign funds. So what I'm proposing is where candidates who are pooling their funds for the purposes of campaigning, the candidates will be required to disclose this to the returning officer, and then the returning officer will publish this information. I just note to members there's two versions of this amendment that have been filed. I will only advance the amendment that requires the disclosure be made to the returning officer, and that's on the basis of feedback I've had from the government. That second amendment has been circulated. This is a really important transparency measure, I think, Mr. President. I became aware many years ago now of the practice of elected members or councillors, council candidates, pooling all of their funds to reduce the costs. Indeed, the failed Team Adelaide faction, affiliated with the Liberal Party, pioneered this technique back in the 2018 local government elections. That was under the leadership of Hassam Abiad and Alex Hyde, who is now the State Director of the Liberal Party. They pioneered this technique where people would put all their money into some sort of joint account or pool the costs, produce materials together and reduce the costs for individual candidates. So they're running in effect as a group of candidates, but that's not been made transparent to the voters. And I do think that's of real concern, and voters do have a right to get access to that information. In the case of the failed Team Adelaide faction led by Alexander Hyde of the Liberal Party, in that instance, Mr Hyde denied that there was a factional grouping in Town Hall, as did Mr Abiad and the other people that were affiliated with that faction. Yeah, I was too, Honourable Mr Hunter, but that information was concealed from the voters until after the election had taken place. Well, this amendment provides more transparency. I'm disappointed to hear that the Liberal Party are not supportive of that, because I think that transparency does enhance our faith in our local democracy. And the final amendment that I'm moving is that candidates be required to include a disclosure of their political party membership, and that disclosure is published in all election materials. I did work with the previous local government minister in the Marshall government, Vicky Chapman, I believe had carriage of this bill at that time, to ensure that there was disclosure of political party membership in the nomination statement. And that was a positive advancement, and I do recognise the Liberal government for moving in that direction. But the area that's missing, I think, is on election materials. And so what I'm proposing is that there be a statement that's included on any election material produced by a candidate to say whether or not they're a member of a political party. And finally, and just for your peace of mind, Mr President, I'm going through this in detail now so that I don't do so at the committee stage. The final amendment I'm moving is to open up the City of Adelaide Act to set a requirement that the meetings be fortnightly. The current requirement under the legislation is that meetings be once a month. That has always been, the convention in the City of Adelaide has been that meetings occur fortnightly. There was, though, an unfortunate incident that occurred back in around 2020 when the Team Adelaide faction took control of the City Council. They then removed the requirement for fortnightly meetings and moved to meetings being once a month. What that meant was that the meetings started at 5 p.m. They reoriented the agenda so that any confidential items are at the front of the meeting, so the community would be excluded, and meetings would go on until 3, 4 in the morning on some occasions with no community input and no media reportage. And so what we saw was a level of a government that is so closely connected with the community really being cut out from any contact with the community because these meetings were suddenly being set up to be endurance exercises. And so as a local councillor, it was deeply disappointing because I would work a full day at work, I would turn up to a meeting and would be stuck in meetings until 2 or 3 in the morning to an empty gallery where no one in the community was able to take part. That was a Team Adelaide Alexander Hyde innovation. So I've proposed that instead we mandate once a fortnight so that these meetings can occur on a normal frequency and within a normal time frame. So that's a summary, Mr President, of my amendments. And I hope that some of these will be considered positively as a way of improving this legislation and ensuring that we learn from some of the mistakes that have been made in the past.